Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another Thursday live stream. And today's podcast, we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of fun things, especially the CrowdStrike incident that happened last week. It's all about unexpected occasions, right? So, in today's episode, we're going to bring in Ryan Renee. We're going to have her introduce herself, and we'll go from there. What's up, Ryan?
Hey, thanks for having me on
Yeah,
the
super
show.
stoked.
Um, yeah, happy to be here. So yeah, I've been doing cybersecurity. It's kind of wild to say it, but about 12 years. Started in the U.S. Air Force, and then I was in consulting with a few different organizations, such as Ernst& Young, Avanade, and Optiv. And now I'm doing work with Siemens
Nice.
Software.
So, what do you do? Like, are you on the offensive side, defensive side? What exactly is it that is like your day to day fun?
So I think the area that I'd say I shine is in like big picture strategy and pulling the different essentially elements more on the defensive side together to see like where there are efficiencies and where there are gaps from like a program wide standpoint, right? So um, not quite there yet, but hopefully one day soon, right? I'll be a CISO, which I think they do very similar work, right? So currently though, I've of my career and where I really am focusing now is a lot of proactive incident response
Hmm.
or reactive incident response. And so trying to ensure that everything from the communication escalations to the compliance requirements to um, whether we're talking about like applications or on-prem or third party risk, like all of that, whatever it is consistent and essentially as efficient as it should be when not if, but when, something happens. So I really enjoy that because it allows me to focus at like the 50-foot thousand view, but then also at times jump into like the
Nice.
5 foot view.
Yeah, I think that's super, super important, especially like you said, like your goal, it seems like it's going to be a CISO. Is that your ultimate goal? That's what you would love to do?
I don't think I'd say ultimate goal, but it is probably like a milestone because I think, especially the way our industry is moving, that there should sooner than later also then be CEOs that are coming out of the business that were like evolving from a CISO standpoint. I don't think we've had that happen yet in corporate America. I'm almost
Hmm.
sure of it. But I do think that that will be kind of the next wave. And then, of course, there's the board of directors. So, yeah, CISO is like a big goal, and I'm hoping it'll be, I'm sure, a very big, fun, crazy chapter. But it is not, I'd say, the ultimate like end of the line for me.
Cool.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know if I would
Mhm.
ever want to be a CISO. I don't know. That's it's not something that I would enjoy, I think, because I still like to be hands on and I enjoy like the offensive side and just like getting into stuff. So, obviously tonight's episode is going to be about, the expectations and the what is it? Expectations and the unexpected, right? So Friday was a big incident around the world with CrowdStrike. So, what is your take on that? Like, how do you think they could have prevented that, or anything? Like, what is your feedback on that whole incident? And were you and your organization impacted on that?
So I can't comment about my organization if we're impacted. I will tell you though, funny enough, I was actually off and I like logged on because I was like, wait, what's going on? But I will say, luckily, I don't think that my team was that impacted. So luckily, I was able to go back to my day off. But it was kind of wild to see those headlines coming out. And then more so, like, it's not even a week over. And just kind of seeing how things are, seeing like, the knee jerk reaction, or is everyone like, hey, jumping ship
Mm-hmm.
from CrowdStrike? Which
Nah.
it doesn't appear that way, but it also could be too soon to tell. Um, Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts on all of it, but essentially, I think, we just need to, as an industry, recognize that third party, whether we want to say outages, because it wasn't exactly an incident, at least not
Mm-hmm.
yet, but things like this are bound to happen. And I think that it really questions, the security or IT privileges that we allow our third parties to have access to. And so obviously, um, this is a big eye opener.
Hmm.
I've always said that in my consulting experience, I never actually had a client complain about CrowdStrike except for maybe their
Yeah,
prices. I'm
exactly.
sure this is obviously going to be a very different tone for the foreseeable future, but I think it's also a reminder, especially these like best in brand, big top dogs, something
Hmm.
happened to them too. So, and right, what can we do? And so one of the things that's quite blatantly obvious, I think, is that Apple products were
Yeah.
not affected, and so why. And so I learned that in my own reading that because of some laws, I think, pushed through Europe, that Microsoft had to allow CrowdStrike to have access essentially to, you know, the crown
Hmm.
jewels, which is why it impacted Microsoft products and not Apple, because Apple hasn't really allowed anyone to have that level of access to their products and their hardware.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's really interesting to see what exactly happened. And I want to comment on exactly what you said. I'm not going to convey if I was impacted or not, but it was just like the industry. I think understanding the testing, the QA aspect of an application, especially that so many clients are on, just to push it out and be like, okay, willy nilly, like that big meme was going out, right? Like, peace out, update, happy Friday or whatever it said, and then it's like, I'm out of here. So it was just interesting. And then it's like, what, 1:30 in the morning EST, like everything's fucking going haywire, So that was a little crazy. And I remember waking up in the morning, like friends and everyone that uses CrowdStrike. He's like, yo, like, what's going on? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I just woke up, like everything is going bananas. And then like I see stuff on like Twitter and everywhere else. It's like, oh man, this is really the real deal. Something's really going on. And no one knew right away. No, like right away, no one really knew what was going on until like someone said, okay, like someone pushed out an update. But I think it was definitely an eye opener for sure.
So I think that there is one thing that is like especially obvious in today's day and age, and it like goes beyond our industry to those whether they really understand cybersecurity or not, which is like those that either believe everything they read or those that like think something else is going on and everything they read is with like a level of scrutiny. And so what this CrowdStrike outage reminded me of was the AT&T outage that actually
Hmm.
happened back in February when majority of their towers and their cell
Hmm.
service went down. And I bring that up because while they also said it was because of a software patch, I'm still convinced to this day that it was probably an actor, like an
Yeah.
Iranian APT, that wanted to disrupt stuff and got into their network. And then instead of admitting to a cyber attack, was able to maybe just like, oh, it was a software patch. Because I'm like, really? Like, are we really allowing a simple software update to wreak this much havoc? Like, are we just not testing them well enough? Like, is that really what's going on either the AT&T/CrowdStrike side? Because for me, it's really hard to believe that, if this was like a smaller, startup company that maybe had just started to like really enter the market and like had to put their big boy pants on, but really had some, let's say, immaturities in their
Hmm.
production environment internally, I feel like I'd be more likely to
Fair
believe
enough.
this. Um, but knowing that we're talking about like very mature companies like AT&T, CrowdStrike, Microsoft, it's one of those that make me ask, well, if this is really real, did you guys just get relaxed and like assume like nothing would go wrong? Um, or is something else
Yeah.
really going on? And so that's kind of where I live, to be just really honest with you, because I'm convinced, like, especially with incidents that make the
Hmm.
public eye like this, there's definitely like more to the story. Whether we ever hear it is a different, that's
Yeah.
also a different
No,
story.
I feel the same exact way. And as the days progressed, I started thinking to myself, yeah, like such a big organization, what is going on? You know what I mean? It's like, like you said, it's such a large place. How can you not push something to QA first and before you're pushing it to prod? Um, and it's just a little crazy. I don't know. I think in my opinion, I think something else was cooking, but we don't know.
Yeah.
Like just I don't know if it's just a New York thing. We don't
So
fucking trust anyone anyway. So
yeah, well, I'm originally from New York, so that could be it. But I think when it comes to cybersecurity, I think the minute you feel like you can trust something is almost like when you should worry. Because even if you have data to support what you're trusting, I'm like, do we even trust this data? Like, how do we know the
yeah,
data is telling the truth? So
yeah, no, that's definitely a fair point. That's definitely a fair point. But we'll see. Hopefully, we'll get the truth out of us or to us sooner rather than later. So, hey, what's up, West? Good to see you, buddy. Hopefully, your new gig is going well. So, we would. I'm trying to think like. So I guess like the security, like the 1 year in review, we can start talking about that. Like, what is your, you wanted to cook on that for a bit?
yeah, so I mean, so CrowdStrike
Mm-hmm.
had this huge outage, and it's been just over about a year that the new SEC compliance requirements were
Mm-hmm.
announced in the US. They became effective in December. And, so CrowdStrike did file already with the SEC because of this outage. And in their very short and to the point
Yep.
8K filing, it says very clearly it's not
Yep.
a cybersecurity incident. And they're saying it's a software update issue. But one of the main items that came out of the SEC disclosures is that if it threatens national security, you actually don't have to publicly disclose, which makes me actually question the whole
Yeah.
system more, because there was an article in the Wall Street Journal that said there's actually a lot of companies that have been able to get this, essentially delay in
Mm-hmm.
reporting publicly because they've somehow justified that it would threaten national security. And so if we go back to like the AT&T hack, that outage that happened in February, I'm convinced again that was like an Iranian APT, that if that's true and the cell towers were down and you couldn't even dial 911, well, then that's obviously pretty
Yeah.
easy to say like national
Mm-hmm.
security was threatened, right? And so similarly, when you think about what's going on right now, I just feel like, have the SEC disclosures done anything to either A, improve cybersecurity, or B, build trust either amongst
Mm-hmm.
investors or the public in any of these brands?
Yeah, it's valid. It's valid. Can't.
Because then on top of that, so this is just kind of where there's inconsistencies, and my brain lives again with what I'm doing with strategy and legal and compliance and trying to understand, like, again, from an incident response, let's say, start to finish, the whole thing, not just the,
Mm-hmm.
cyber part. As I said, CrowdStrike filed with the SEC for this outage, which I'm not even, because I guess it's going to be a material weakness, probably, right? They're saying it's going to cost at least $5 billion, and who's real is CrowdStrike going to be responsible for
You get
every
that ten.
company's
You get
outage?
that ten
Like,
dollar
that will
gift
be
card.
interesting to see. That's a whole different thing. I'm convinced that was like fake. That I don't even know what to make of that. That's ridiculous. But on the SEC reporting side, so Microsoft has
Mm-hmm.
not filed with the SEC yet, even though they're the primary ones that were obviously like impacted in this like supply chain. We'll call it an error because it wasn't an attack yet. But then, 2 months ago,
Mm-hmm.
Snowflake had an issue similar, but different, because I think they're saying like their product wasn't like actually exploited. It was a credential issue. But then Ticketmaster's parent company has filed an SEC with the SEC for, their major breach related to that. And so it's like, okay, who really, like, what did this do? I don't think it's done anything personally. And I don't think that the added support cybersecurity expected to see in the industry coming from the business side
Mm-hmm.
actually is there. If anything, I feel like we're just under more scrutiny, and we're getting less resources. Guess that wasn't meant to stay on. Anyway, so I just feel like, what, everyone made a big deal when the SEC disclosures were announced. I don't even feel like they made as big of a deal in December when they were active, because everyone knew it was coming, and hopefully by then everybody was
Mm-hmm.
ready and kind of figured it out. Especially with like last year having the MGM hack, and they did, filed the SEC and a few others like Clorox. But here we are a year later and
Yeah.
no one's talking about it. I feel like it's fair to call and say, you know what, this was a good effort, SEC. I like what you were doing, but you have
Mm-hmm.
a little bit more to go. And it's not one of those compliance check the boxes, because that's what I think this is. I think this is a check the
Yeah,
box.
no, I agree. It's an interesting topic because I was talking to someone yesterday about it as well, and yeah, like we're saying very similar things. It was just very like it's just. I think it's just a setup. I don't know. Like I think it's just some.
You
No,
think the
no, no,
SEC
no,
is a
no.
setup?
Just like the whole hack
Oh,
and everything. I'm just thinking still about the hack.
oh
No,
yeah.
yeah, and it's just like, oh man, no, the SEC, no, absolutely,
I was like, wow, that's a whole
no,
different
no.
conversation. I need a drink.
Yeah, no, no, no. So what is it? Inter West means VP. Yeah, I don't know what that Mysterio. I don't know who the hell that is.
Oh, I don't know the insert. Yeah, someone said South Park meme of, I don't think I know that one. But yeah, I just think that SEC disclosures, look
Mm-hmm.
really promising. And I think at the end of the day, they've completely missed the mark. And I'll just go a little bit more on a personal note of when the SEC disclosures first got announced, like actually in
Mm-hmm.
2022, that they were on the horizon. I will admit I wasn't as maybe confident, so I wouldn't have maybe said this out loud, because when I first read them, I had a very similar opinion as I do now, which I was like, this doesn't seem good enough. But I was kind of afraid because it felt like the entire industry was celebrating this, that I was like, well, maybe something's wrong with me because I am like not seeing this. Like something is missing in my professional opinion. And I was almost afraid to come out and publicly say that, because I was afraid that somebody would like easily just
Mm-hmm.
tear me to pieces. And I was afraid of like basically having my
Mm-hmm.
credibility questioned. And last year, when they were more formally announced, I did start to say that. And I did have some people be like, no, 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 this is great. Like, you're missing it. And so I guess I'm just here to say, like, no, 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 no. Like, maybe I'm still missing it. But let me tell you, like, if anything, I'm still paying attention. And yeah, I promise you, like, I'm reading. I don't even think people are even reading these like SEC filings. And I'll go in every now and then and be like, yeah, like, what does this do? Like, for anybody, please. Like, I get that this again is supposed to be like a
Mm-hmm.
CYA,
Mm-hmm.
cover your ass for, the company
Mm-hmm.
to their investors. And I think that's the other thing on the SEC disclosures for cybersecurity that people miss. This is not necessarily meant for citizens and
Mm-hmm.
everyday consumers. This is really intended for the investors, so that they have transparency that they are investing in a company that should be able to hopefully survive,
Mm-hmm.
ransomware or these huge IT things, or, at least understand the
Yeah.
risk better. Um, so I think that's also like a reason that people first maybe thought they
Mm-hmm.
were going to be great. But when, again, you look at it, they're not really doing much for you
Yeah.
or me or anybody.
Nah. No.
They're
Yeah.
just a
No.
fun
Yeah.
headline.
Absolutely. It's all about the, I guess, the clout, if you want to call it, if you want to say that. I don't.
I guess, yeah, I think it was supposed to provide accountability, but especially with how many people are kind of getting like okay, yeah, you can
Mm-hmm.
delay. It's if you went from having 4 days to report, or file with the SEC, and now everyone's apparently getting like
Mm-hmm.
exceptions. And then by the time they apparently do maybe come out and announce like, oh, we didn't publicly disclose, like
Exactly.
nobody cares.
Exactly. And that's what happens, right? Time passes, and like you said just prior, right? A year later, like the MGM hack, no one really talks about that anymore. It's like if it's a, you know,
I think I just heard that a teenager got arrested for it, and I was like teenagers.
yeah,
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 but no one cares.
those are the dangerous ones, and it's like I don't know if they think that they're just invisible or like untouchable because they're a minor and no one's gonna fuck with them because it's like I can do this, or they just don't give a shit and they're like, all right, I'm just gonna go ahead and do it, spray and pray. You know what I mean, and see what happens. And if it work,
Right.
like if
I think it's more, if I had to take a guess, I always assumed it was like the risk is worth like the consequence. So, if you're potentially getting millions
yeah,
of dollars and you're a teenager,
yeah,
and there's a hair of a good chance you get away with it. Like, I think that it's almost too good to pass up, maybe, if you, I don't want to say have skewed morals, but essentially like have no morals, and you feel like, hey, there's a good 80% chance or 50, even if it's a 50% chance I get away with
Pretty
it, like
high.
I think people have taken chances on definitely like a less successful percentage of that it would,
No, fair
so
enough. Yeah. Yeah. See, I didn't hear that. One thing, I don't really watch the news too much, and I'll do my daily. Oh yeah,
really,
I don't stay up on it, especially like in cyber. It's like I'm so like deep into whatever I'm doing, unless like when you start looking for a new position, right? And it's like, oh, probably the last five, no, maybe four interviews I've had is like, how do you stay up to date? You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, whatever happens today, we take care of it, right? Um, so it's like, if you go to like Hacker News, if you go to like Bleeping Computer, and all these, it's like everyone and their mother's getting hacked every day. You know what I mean? It's like, how can you keep up with every single thing in there unless it's like huge highlight, Like, I don't know. For me, it's more about like
yeah, by
understanding.
the way, I do agree. For me, it's not quantity, it's quality.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do
Exactly.
feel like for me, trying to stay up to date in cyber, like however you do that is key to like staying fresh in your job.
Yeah. I
And
think that, I think what I have learned, I don't know how old you are, and that's none of my business on live on the internet. But I think over the last, because I've been in the field for 20 years now. Hopefully, that doesn't give my age away.
I have a friend who would say, if you ask her that I'm 700 years old. So I'm just going to go with
So that's a good one. So like, I think like
that. And she'll say it like dead straight in the face too. Like I'm
that's
700 years old.
I'd fucking laugh at him. But so yeah, it's just like as as like I was coming up in the game. Yeah, you're like super eager. I guess right now, I guess it goes in waves for me. It's like right now, for an example, like I haven't touched a certification in probably, I don't know, a couple of years, right? And then once I was like, okay, like this is my saying right now, like it's off season in hockey. So like right now it's summer. So it's like, okay, now until September.
Yeah, we're still repping what looks
Oh
like
yeah,
the
yeah.
Ranger
This is a Ranger
shirt.
shirt. Yeah, I'm a big Ranger fan.
Okay, yeah. So just to be clear, so it's not Ranger season, it's not hockey
Yeah.
season,
So
but
now it's like,
that or you didn't do laundry. Okay.
exactly. So like now it's like hacking season, right? So going back to what you were saying, like right now I'm up on the latest and greatest attacks and all that stuff with all like studies that I'm doing and stuff like that. Like, and now I'm back in the game. And it's really true. Like if you don't use something, you lose it. So it's like
Hmm.
from the very basic attacks, I know this is going off in a tangent of certifications. Like when I first started, and that's what really why I prolonged. If those folks out there was like, everyone and their mother was telling me like, go for like TCMP, MPT. It's really easy for you, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not in the game every day. Like this person is, right. So it's like, but when you go into and you're learning again, not learning again, like you're refreshing or whatever. It's like, okay, like this is cool. So staying up on top of the game and writing new exploits and whatever I'm doing, it's like, okay, it's like riding a bike, in my opinion. Like if you're not doing it every day and once you jump back on the bandwagon and you're like, okay, I want to start doing this again. And yeah, it's super easy. So going back to what you were saying about staying up on news, like in my opinion, like if it has nothing to do, for example, with CrowdStrike, if I use CrowdStrike where I'm at, yeah, cool. But if I don't really care. Right? Like, what do I care? I don't use CrowdStrike. Why do I care if someone's machine blue screened? I don't know if that's maybe being a dick or.
Um, I don't think that there's a right or wrong answer. So I think at the end of the day, it's
Mhm.
really what you make it. Um, and like I said before, it's quality, not quantity. And for me, I think I like to really understand like the latest and
Mhm.
greatest. Not even just on like attacker TTPs, but what's going on in the industry and just what's going on in the world, right? And so one of the other things we wanted to talk about today, and I think this is a good segue. And I think this headline like maybe was a headline for 5 seconds. But I don't really think it was, definitely was not CrowdStrike worthy. Then again, I don't know what's been CrowdStrike worthy. So back in December, after 23andMe had been breached, I think about September, October, they actually came out and blamed their users. And I thought that really obviously stuck with me, and it's a thorn in my side. Because even so, the way that 23andMe breach basically came to be is certain users, and we know everyone's like guilty of this to some extent. Whatever email address and password they were using to log into 23andMe, they'd probably also use to, like, let's say, log into like a Netflix or a WordPress or some other, platform. And it was the same exact password and email. And it was probably compromised somewhere else and then posted on these like hacker paste bins. And some hacker came along with a list of these and tried to like plug them into Snowflake and got through and was then able to kind of like move throughout these user accounts because 23andMe doing the ancestry. So like if they hacked a guy named Sam, well, Sam's related to Mary, and now they can like access and view information, sensitive-ish information, and say like, oh, well, Mary's British or Mary's Jewish, and here might be Mary's like, location or whatever. And then tried to sell like essentially ethnic data online. And the first one that came out was Ashkenazi Jews, and like people were like, is this a digital like Nazis? And like, who would just want to hack like the Jews? And of course that was like right before October 7th, right? So anyway, that all said, Snowflake comes out in October and blames their users. And I think what's frustrating about that, so I'll just put my hat on for a minute or be honest, of like, I'm a 23andMe user. And I'm like, this is, by the way, I was not part of their breach that I know of, at least not directly with my account credentials. But my information, like I just said, could have been revealed if someone I'm related to. I'm apparently related to like 1,500 people on the app. So that's what it tells me. I have 1,500 relatives, and like 99% of them are like third cousins, and none of them I'm pretty sure are famous. And no, I've not talked to all of them. But then that said, obviously, as also being a cybersecurity, professional, I think it's quite easy to say, well, first of all, apparently they in Snowflake has been pretty transparent. Who this threat actor started doing this brute force attacking back in May through September. So the fact that none of Snowflake's detection controls even like alerted on this brute force attacking on their platform, I think is on, Snowflake. The second thing is Snowflake didn't even allow customer MFA until after. And now I think it's on by default or it's required. Either way, it's not like as a user or consumer, we are very limited in the controls that we can apply when using, a platform like that. And so I just thought it was interesting because my first thought was like, oh my gosh, is this going to be like the future? Like, is this where we are now? Is everyone going to just start blaming the user? I mean, I hope not, because as I just said, like there are definitely controls 23andMe should have had to detect this brute force and then like prevent it. And they didn't. So I just thought that was really interesting. That might not have made your headlines in your news, but I think it really informs someone like me, because when people come in, after an incident, when I was more in a consulting role and I would consult during active incidents with multiple clients, God forbid anyone ever came and said, hey, can we put out a statement blaming our users? I might be that much more prepared to be like, oh no, like, listen to me, don't do that. Because I can promise you it wasn't received with good appreciation.
Yeah, no, definitely not. And that's interesting because it's like, you think about it, it's like, sounds like they never went through an audit or some kind of pen test, because that would be like the first thing, right? Like, all right, we have a login portal and there's no MFA. So that's definitely a finding, right? It's like, especially for an application that's housing such PII information. And it's like, shit, dude, like that's no bueno. And it's like, especially being a user, and obviously that touches home a little more because it's like, oh shit, like my shit's in there, It's like, that's where it's obviously it's a little more touching. But yeah, and blaming blaming the user, fuck, man, that's. But what were they saying? What were they saying that it's the user's fault? Like, what is the user's fault?
For recycling passwords. So that it was like the user's fault for recycling passwords.
Fucking stupid.
And credentials. And that, users should have either been aware if their passwords were previously compromised, through like have I been on or something, and or not changing them. But again, a platform like 23andMe also could require their user to change their passwords like every 90 days. And I don't know if they've changed it, but obviously that
Exactly.
wasn't a thing traditionally, or they could have had stricter password control so that like it's unlikely users could have recycled. Like, you know what I mean? You and I could probably come up with like a bunch of controls that they
Yeah.
could have had that again are out of the hands of users. And so at least for whatever it's worth, I hope that this was like a one-off, like anyone else who saw this is paying attention and is like, okay, like rule number one in the playbook, let's
Yeah.
not blame our users.
And it's interesting that you say like about the
Because
have I been pwned, because I always thought that there was some false positives there. And
that's
and
probably true
I
too.
I think it is because I created a sock puppet account probably 2 years ago, right? And I have a whole bunch of them out there, but like this specific one, I'm like, okay, like I wanted to know because I was on this, when I checked on one of my Hotmail accounts from way back when, it had me on all this shit. I'm like, I don't know. I never even heard of half of these things. I don't even know what the fuck they're talking about. So I made like a sock puppet account. I sat on it. I never hooked it up into anything. It's just fucking only Gmail, right? And then a year later, it said it was pwned in some things. I'm like,
Either way, the point is
yeah,
Snowflake was trying to blame the users for like not having better visibility. But at the end of the day, I think users or everyday citizens, whatever you want to say, because I don't think users is the right word, but like just people, we're really limited, I think. When you think about controls in the industry, they really are on
yep.
websites and platforms. There was actually a quote that I saw, like just browsing through, you think it was Instagram or LinkedIn, and it says like, I don't secure computers, I
Mm,
secure society. And I love that. But the truth of the matter is, and we know this from a phishing standpoint, the weakest link into an
yep.
organization is the human. But in society, I think that works as well, not just because like we're more likely, let's say, to fall for a scam than, a platform
Yep.
having a vulnerability, maybe. But more so, we're also really limited in the security controls that we can put
Mm-hmm.
out there for ourselves. And even if I can try to like put like an identity monitoring, I'm still
Yeah.
trusting another third party, or if I want to like, and I don't mean me personally, but if a person wants to use something like, secure their passwords like LastPass, well, I've already lost track of how many times LastPass has been hacked. So like, I don't know, you know what I mean? So like, we're really limited in the
Yep.
personal security. And that is something I'm personally curious that like in the next 5 to 10 years, if we're going to find a way to have a better, not saying like I need my own personal little sock, like AI sock at this point, to monitor for like my own compromised credentials for personal accounts and like my own security. But we are limited, and that's just the truth. And then on top of that, I'm a cyber
Yeah.
person who understands this. Like your average, everyday, let's say Mary Joe, who might be plumbers or teachers or carpenters, whatever. Like, what are they supposed to
Yeah.
have? And then if there is anything out there, like it's
Mm-hmm.
pricey, so it just gets really complicated
Yeah.
really fast.
And I try to explain that. I guess my family's a little different. They're from the neighborhood and they don't give a shit. They keep their money under their bed, but it's like, yeah, they don't really use bank. Yeah, there's 4 people in my family that they don't use banks, but they just do their thing. But it's like like the normal, like you said, Mary and Joe. It's like, okay, how are they going to understand all the technical terms and technical controls to put into play when you don't have an understanding? Okay, like, oh, use an MFA, Mary. The fuck is MFA? Use whatever.
Oh, so it's funny you say that. It's funny you say it because one of the banks I consulted
Mm-hmm.
with actually kind of, so they were their primary audience for this bank was like people who were more likely to be in like a level of poverty or lower
Mm-hmm.
middle class and or an elderly population. And what they did on their mobile app for their users, not their employees, their users, is pretty much without any kind of like change management communication or warning. Like overnight, they put out, and this is years ago, MFA, and you had like your grandparents and just people who were like, I don't know how to set this up. I don't know how to access it. And then they couldn't use the app to like access money.
Yeah.
And that was like a big deal. And so the organization I was with at the time got called in to kind of essentially like review their change management like process, look at like gaps, whether it's and like they had issues within the org of even communicating to their own people with certain changes, let alone their like key clientele. And as you can imagine, I mean, I think they have people who were like, well, probably did leave that bank because they're like, this is ridiculous. I couldn't access my own money when I wanted
Yeah.
to. And so I think on like a little bit of a different note, when it comes to cybersecurity, and again, this is kind of where I focus. I feel like people are hyper technical, and I'm glad there are hyper technical people. Yo, Cyber Warrior Studios. I'm really happy that we have really technical people. This is not like who's better, but I don't think we have enough people that either understand the other functions of the business and or understand the like non-technical aspects. And if you do have those people, I don't find that they work close enough with the technical people. And I just think that as far as our entire industry goes, like that's a big gap because, you and I could talk all day about having an MFA control and it'll make sense. But the reality is like someone needs to then talk to like marketing.
Yeah.
To tell whoever is now going to, you know what I mean? Be aware, like, hey, this is coming, like go do your job and you communicate it in the way that you need to. And like, let me know what you need for me. If that makes sense. And that's where I think in general, like our industry is really lacking. And so it makes sense that like the greater population is lacking it. We're lacking it within our industry.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Kevin. $5 for green tea. I appreciate that. I want to buy you a pizza pie. And
I feel like I'm missing a joke. Is that like real green tea?
So the joke is like I haven't really been drinking it a lot because green tea, it's like my addiction. Like I love green tea.
And you're like green tea or like a green tea shot?
No, green tea. I don't drink alcohol. I've never been drunk. I don't drink alcohol. But like green tea, like Lipton or green tea with lemon. Yeah. No. So that's why with like Derek's or Cyber Warrior Studios happy hour Fridays, it's funny because I'll go on and hang out with my green tea. And so Kevin, I love green tea. It's like my addiction. But
cheers to you. I have my sparkling water.
Yeah,
if you've been seeing me drink.
This is just water. So like I'm trying to do a little cleanse before DEF CON. So like trying to set away from the sugar and green tea and caffeine. Yingling. Yeah, I don't do the yingling. But are you going to any conferences this year?
I don't think so.
Gotcha. Have you been to DEF CON?
I haven't. The one year I could have went was like right after Black Hat, and I was at Optiv at the time, and I found out like last minute. They're like, yeah, if you really want to go, like we'll approve it. And I was like, no, like I'm dead. I haven't slept. Like I'm like pretty dead. I'm good. And like I'm not gonna say I regret it, but now I'm like, oh man, like when am I gonna get to go? So maybe next year we'll see. I actually think I booked a hotel. I don't even think I canceled it yet. I think I have like a pretty cheap hotel for a DEF CON booked, and I'm like, So like I'll let you know if that changes. But as of right now, I'm like, it's like what, a week and a half or 2
weeks. Yeah, because what is today? It's 25th, and it's exactly 2 weeks. Holy shit, it's 2 weeks away. It'll be the 8th. Damn. I better just drink more water. But yeah, so I better drink more water to lose a few more pounds. But so now I guess like the next topic we can get into, because we have like 20 more minutes. So I want to respect your time. And then like the ransomware, weaponization, all that good stuff. So yeah, if you want to give a holler with that, and then we can go off that.
So, and I've talked about this a little bit on the Cyber Warrior Studios, Fridays, but something that I'm kind of surprised that our industry, and kind of playing all together, right? Like we're talking about the news, like whether you look at it or not, I continue to be really surprised sometimes. I think that there are changes in our industry that aren't really identified. They kind of like get swept under a rug of like something else. And I don't know if we're just failing to like modernize and evolve, or it's just because it's so complex as it is, like it would just make it more complex. And we are just creatures of like preferring simplicity. But, ransomware, hands down, I think gets a lot of attention. Whether you're in cyber or out of it, like you have an idea what ransomware is. But even though it's essentially the same, there's like, in my opinion, a very different type of ransomware that I think needs to be essentially renamed, because you actually have to prepare for it differently. And so whether you want to call it like war encryption, I don't know. I haven't come up with the best name for it. But, so when Ukraine and Russia broke out like physical war, there were a lot of threat actors, almost like, depending on what side you're on, call them vigilantes, whatever you want, hacktivists, that then began hacking almost like in support of whether they were pro, Ukraine or pro Russia. And then with the Israel-Hamas conflict, you had, apparently Iranian state-sponsored actors have been attacking anything that has any connection or support for Israel, trying to just disrupt shit, just to be like, just so they could say, we can. And that's why I thought they did the AT&T thing back in February. But they apparently hacked like a water plant in the middle of nowhere, Ireland, simply because apparently that water plant they figured out like had hardware from Israel was the reason, as well as like a myriad of other attacks. And this kind of like, it's, even though again, it's still an encryption ransomware, like malware, or it is exactly the same, it's very different intents and potentially different threat actors. And so what's interesting is like, well, one, if you have cyber insurance, if it's technically a cyber attack that's a part of an active war, your policy most likely will not cover it. And so how do you define that? Well, you define like, well, was it Russian state actors? So like right now, if you're dealing with a ransomware attack that's Russian, there's a good chance, even if like everything else meets your insurance policy, that they're going to deny you. And again, news and where I read the news. So back in 2017, after it was either NotPetya or WannaCry, Merck had a huge, like it really messed up their system. And so they tried to file with their insurance policy for a cyber attack. And the cyber insurance policy, I forget who it was at the time, basically came back and was like, nope, this is considered an active war because it's Russian. But in 2017, there was no active war happening. And so when they went for the appeal, Merck won on the appeal, and their cyber insurance policy had to pay for all the damages and all the operational loss, et cetera, et cetera. But that sets precedence, which means now, because there are active wars happening and active conflicts, if you're hit by a certain type of, related adversary, if you have cyber insurance, it most likely will not apply.
Yeah.
And I don't think, again, most cyber insurance, like if you're in cyber insurance, you probably know that. But if you're a cyber professional, there's a good chance you don't know that. And then imagine if you're like just a business exec and you're like, oh, well, we're fine. Because I've run into that when I used to do more tabletops. Like they're like, oh, we have cyber insurance. Like, we'll be fine. Well, do you know what your cyber insurance policy is? Because it's probably not fine because they won't pay for war.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty universal across almost all insurance companies. Unless maybe you could take out like a really expensive edition. Like if you can, that's above like that. I'm not the insurance specialist, but so like there's that. And then on top of it, almost a year ago, the Red Cross came out with like, call it like hacker ethics, basically saying like, stop hacking the Red Cross. Just like you shouldn't be able to, if for anyone who's a veteran, right, you shouldn't be able to target the Red Cross, like from a military standpoint, you shouldn't be able to like take them, out, bomb them, etc. They're like, hey, hackers, like stop hacking us. And like, that has done nothing.
Yeah.
As you can imagine, and a Red Cross enterprise, which is essentially like a nonprofit, how strong, is the cybersecurity in the nonprofit sector? It's usually not that great.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I worked for the Jewish Federation many years ago, and it was always something on their mind, right? Because, what you were just talking about, right? Like they're always a target for some reason. And it's like, and obviously it's a nonprofit. It was scary because it's like, oh, we need to put these controls in place. Yeah. But, obviously money's a limit. I'm not sure. Hopefully because now cyber is a lot more hot than 7 years ago, or 6 years ago, however long ago was it. And it's 2019.
Yeah. 7 years ago. Sorry, that happened like right as I got out of the military. I think I just started working at Ernst & Young.
It's just nuts. It's just like, but hopefully everyone just, put some stuff in their, I guess in their practice, right? In their controls, because I think it's so critical. And, just like the big meme, right? Like, like we have $0 today, but once you get fucking hacked, now you have $1 million somewhere fucking under your bed somewhere.
Well, and it's interesting to see like cyber warrior studios, right? Adversaries as a whole have become more money hungry than hacktivists. And so it's interesting because with the most recent like ransomware attack on the hospitals in London, that was pretty significant. So it was done by a group called, I'm not sure, am I saying it right? Quinlan, it's a Q, something, whatever. Well, they tried to say that they were sorry for the harm they caused, but that they're hacktivists. But a lot of people are like, you're known for money extortion. Like you're probably just trying to somehow get out of this if you're ever like
Yeah.
caught. But you do have like, well, it wasn't again war related. One of the first ransomware attacks that like definitely unfortunately killed somebody in Germany. It was a university that was targeted, but the university had a hospital in the network. And so because of this, all the systems were down. And so when a woman came in to get care from like on an ambulance, they had to turn her away. And the closest next hospital was over an hour away. So she died en route. And apparently whenever this was communicated to the hackers that like, you now have a death on your hands, they're like, we're sorry. We want nothing to do with this. That we didn't even know a hospital was in the environment. Like we just let ransomware go, wild throughout the environment. And they gave the decryption key for free and probably like deleted their existence online.
Yeah.
So it's wild. And then like kind of bringing it all together, like before we were talking about how there's no security controls really for like the common man and woman. I always keep wondering like when there's enough hackers, I think, in the world, like when is a hacker essentially going to get hacked? And like, do they see like a game like, oh, someone got me, like I'll get you back? Because like, I'm sure there's been a hacker that's either tried to go to a hospital or been at a bank or tried to go buy a car a few weeks ago and like the dealerships were down and was like somehow impacted, whether it was just like an inconvenience or like what the F. And I just would have to imagine that at some point, like enough hackers and threat actors will be impacted and will be like, well, this sucks. I mean, it probably won't happen. And I guess that keeps us employed, but it's just kind of wild that like, I can't like, are they not getting hit
like,
too?
It's funny. He doesn't claim to be, he's not a pen tester or John Hammond, right? Like he's a security researcher. I remember when he was just eating dinner with his family. And I remember I texted him or just shooting the shit with him that same day. He was just like, someone tried to hack him. Like, I guess someone sent him like a PDF with something. Yeah. With like
Probably.
a YouTube saying like he got something and literally like he was like nonchalant. It's not like he was in front of his computer. He was just looking at his phone. He almost clicked on it. Right. So it's like, and then he just broke it down. Then he obviously when he got home, he started looking into the malware and then he broke it down like way beyond what the fuck I understood. But, like, it's like, oh snap. Like, yeah, I think people are, especially like if you in the spotlight, like the cyber mentor, Heath Adams, he got attacked, like there's people that,
oh yeah,
I don't know if it's out of jealousy. I don't know if it's, because they're envious of, those folks, but it's like, it's definitely in the game. And, that's why like,
you're talking about some cyber psychology right there.
That's and that's why like, even with me, maybe with some people, I like to claim very beginner, right? Like I'm just a kid that does some fucking YouTube videos and I don't really put maybe I'm conveying it now, but I don't put the knowledge out there that I really know, right? I just like to keep it, on a DL, like, oh, I'm just a normal fucking guy, right? Just because, I don't want to be that Mr. Know-it-all target. I don't want no fucking target on my back. You know what I mean? And so it's like now, obviously it's getting, I never did this to, claim to fame or whatever. I don't want any of that. Whoever wants that can have it. It was just more about like just helping people, right? If you want to get into the world of cyber or IT, like how can I be a hand, a resource? And now obviously it grew to what it is today, 4 years later. But it's like, that's why like try not to be that center of attention and just be you. And that's what, like, for example, there's folks out there that, love to show what they have accomplished busting their ass. Right. And I love all of them for doing that. But it's like, now you're just putting, a target on your back, if either to get physically hurt because of enviness or, or cyberly attacked. Right. Like fucking.
Well, I don't know if I agree with that part. And I'll just say
I know
that
for sure because someone threatened me and I ended up almost. So, yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I just like when you say that some people put themselves out there. No, I meant that part. Like, so like and this also goes more on like a physical safety thing, not just like a cybersecurity thing. But one of the things I've always said is like, I will never let fear stop me. So I'm not going to like miss out on a career opportunity
Mm-hmm.
or a life
Mm-hmm.
opportunity because like I have
Mm-hmm.
fear. Now, as a risk professional, I'll tell you that I always consider like the risk versus like the
Yeah.
reward and like the likelihood, so it's not like, go impulsively like do whatever the heck I want. But I do feel that like if I want to
Mm-hmm.
do something, whether it's speak on a podcast or speak at a conference or right, I mean, yeah, that's going to gain
Mm-hmm.
some good attention, but with that can
Mm-hmm.
come negative attention. And then you can exacerbate that by the fact that like I'm a woman, and I think people tend to just assume that like women are easier targets, again, more on the physical side.
Mm-hmm.
um I think that it's always a personal, just like we tell companies in cyber that like your risk threshold might be
Mm-hmm.
different than others. I think it's a personal thing. And that's like a whole different conversation. But, yeah, I do think that if you want to be private, and I will definitely say working in this industry, again, growing up with like MySpace and Facebook, let's just say privacy made no sense to me until about 25. And then I was like, oh, this is why privacy is awesome. Oh, like if I could erase myself off the internet more, yeah, okay. If I could maybe change my name, like not against it. I think there's privileges that come with privacy, and
Yeah.
I can definitely respect those more. And I think the key is as long as you can try to be as much as you can be in
Mm-hmm.
control of it, that's like the key. So, controlling what you put out there. But also, if I'm not going to put something out there, I don't want it to be
Yeah.
because I'm
No,
afraid.
exactly. And I was like that. I was never afraid, but like about being
Yeah.
anonymous, like I was like that until I started my
Yeah.
YouTube channel, right? Like if the folks
Mm.
knew me before that, like I use my, Pasquale Maroni. That was my name everywhere, right? And that's my Italian name. So it's like I never used Patrick. I used Pasquale. And so it's like I use that everywhere until like, okay, now it's like you have a little channel, and you have like even on LinkedIn I had that name up there until I think 3 years ago,
Mm.
right? So I never use my legal name, my government name, whatever you want to call it. Like I try to be as anonymous as I can, and it was more towards that privacy and trying to like because I have your name, I can find out where you live, if you own a house, like everything is just on a click of a button. So I was like, you know and it's interesting because like if I'm asking for someone, if I exchange numbers with someone in the industry, like last year I remember I exchanged numbers with another content creator at DEF CON, and I was like, oh, like I'll text you right now, I'll lock you in. And it went to like his Google Voice. I'm like, dude, give me your fucking real number. Like, I don't need a Google Voice number because then it's like the reception
I
is,
don't like Google Voice. But like I respect the need for it.
yeah,
I'll give you a funny, like really wait, I'll give you a really quick funny one. And you'll I think laugh at this because you probably understand it just as well as I do. But I met a guy on a dating app, and we decided to get off the dating app and text
yep,
each other. But he refused to give me his last name. And he's like, well, I'm afraid you could like hack me. And I'm like, let me get this straight. Like, I have your phone number. And it wasn't
yeah,
a Google number. I was like, you realize, like, if anything, I could do more damage. Like, I have your phone number. And what's really dumb about it is I realized through Telegram that, like, he was also on Telegram. I don't even use Telegram that much, but he has his last name saved in his profile in Telegram. And I was like, I don't even like no hacking needed, bro. And as a cyber professional, I always tell people, like, I really respect privacy. Like I don't want to spy on people. I don't want to have to look like I don't want to have to live
yeah.
paranoid. And that's again like a whole other conversation. But like this guy was like adamant, he would not give me his last name to the point where I'm like, are you just trying to be funny? Or do you really think like it's that big of a deal? Because like it got to the point where I really was convinced that he was hiding like being married and wife and kids because he thought maybe I'd find, but I don't think that was the case. I think he genuinely thinks his last name is like
Precious.
that worthy of security. And I was like, no, then you need to get like a Google app number because like once you have someone's number, you can plug that in and like find out
Yeah.
so much more and then do like way more
And
damage.
it's on
Like
a,
I just was
I
like,
wonder, yeah, I totally, because if I was on there and I was on there, it's like, okay, like if I'm going to ask for your name, like what if I especially like Ryan, right? It's like, okay, like if you have Ryan, maybe I have another, last week there was a Ryan, there was a Ryan last week, right? So it's like, okay, now I have, and I have Ryan Montgomery, O'Day. So there's like, I can think about like 4 or 5 Ryans off the top of my head. So it's like, okay, like what is your last name? So I can just save your last name so I can know how to, it's not like, oh, for example, if you're saying you're on a dating app, oh, it's going to be Ryan Bumble, Ryan Hinge, or whatever the hell it is. It's like, that's stupid, I don't know. That's just,
I just couldn't get over the fact, and like also on a side note, people who aren't in cyber, when they hear that I'm in cyber, they all assume that I'm
yeah,
like a
everyone
hacker.
thinks that. It's like,
And I'm like,
yeah,
no,
cybersecurity.
no, I'm Glinda the Good Witch.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting because everyone thinks about cyber as a hacker, and that's one thing. Like, I would say the same thing. I'd be like, oh, I'm in cybersecurity. Oh, you're gonna hack my Instagram. You're gonna hack my. I'm like, no. And then I ended up saying, you know what? I'm in IT. Like I just like backed out. It's not
Oh,
like,
really? Is that the key? I'm gonna start using that.
yeah, I work in
That's what I'll
IT.
say.
I work.
I think I know. Well, when I travel, I'm for some reason a little bit more afraid, especially when you're putting on like an immigration form. So I just put business analyst.
Yeah, or you can.
I think I'm just gonna start using that for now. That I'm a business or a paralegal because I do a lot with the laws for cyber. I'm just gonna say I'm a paralegal. See, I don't like that. And yes, to Cyber Warrior's point, like I actually, okay, I am the good witch, but I don't want to lie because like it's maybe like it predates the Air Force, but with the Air Force, like integrity first was always a big important core value that's still very important to me. And then in general, like I just really grew up with like, you do the right thing even if no
Exactly.
one's watching. And my mom actually would always say sometimes being right can be a lonely place. I mean, she said that more like everyone might be doing drugs, don't do drugs. But anyway, I guess it worked.
Yeah, exactly. And same. Like that's why I stayed away from the things I stayed away from. But yeah, like Kevin trying to hack my.
Wait, what's Kevin like? What does Kevin have on his
I
Game
think
Boy?
that,
Like, are you gonna steal his Pokemon? Like, I feel like I'm
yeah.
out of date on
So,
this. Like, what sensitive data is on your
so
Game Boy?
I don't know if he's saying this to fuck with me because another fun fact, talking about drugs and alcohol. I never played a video game in my life, so I don't play video games. I never did.
What?
Yeah, I never played a video game, so I don't know any.
Oh,
I don't know anything about crypto. I
that's
don't know
very
anything
smart.
about any of that stuff. Like, I'm very
Do you even watch
barely if
TV?
hockey's not on, and that's funny because Owned and Kevin, they were in my house, and literally like they can vouch for it. I don't watch anything but hockey. Yeah, I don't watch much TV at all. But yeah, like unless like it's like a crime thing or something like that. But no, I'm not really into too much TV. Yeah, he's just messing me out because I don't play. I think
I figured he wasn't
yeah
really serious, but good to know.
yeah. So that's chips and hockey, and yeah, that's pretty much
You
no
said chicks in hockey?
chips like.
I keep hearing you say chicks.
That would be a good one.
It's a good thing to be into chicks and hockey. Hey, I'm into hockey. Not so much the chicks part, but hey, you do your boo boo.
Yeah.
It was Suits was good. I've watched TV. It's the only way I make my brain like shut off. So
yeah, it's normally like if I'm not like doing some kind of like something on the computer or CTF or hacking or doing something like productive here, either it's like I go to the gym or go hang out with family, and yeah, that's pretty much what I do on my day to day.
Oh, well, so you and I are similar but different. So like I'll watch TV occasionally. I try to avoid it, but every now and then it's good to just like crash with a good show or something. But I think I want to train for my first triathlon.
Nice. Yeah.
And I would say if I wasn't in cyber, I'd like wish I could be a professional athlete and just like run all day or lift weights and Pilates and
yeah. Staying active is really critical. And I want to answer one thing since we're on that. Wes put this up here. I'm going to put it up here. So Wes, if you're still here, why does everyone have a go get fit before the con? Is that a surprise?
I didn't know that was a thing.
So for me personally, like me, my friend Jacob, and there's 2 other people that we, I'm really into arm wrestling too. So like arm wrestling, I've been doing that for almost a year now. Actually, the last DEF CON. Yeah, arm
Arm
wrestling. Yeah.
wrestling.
And
And we're talking about arm wrestling, not like something else like
no,
arm
no,
wrestling.
no, like you actually arm wrestling. And so like it's
Okay.
me and two other people. Like we were trying to like get into a shape. It's like, okay, like let's try to do like a month out of the con. We'll try to get fit and we'll do a little arm wrestling competition. So hopefully they've been training for that as well. I don't know, Jacob or anyone else that wants to join. You know, I think Kevin is a part of it. I don't know if how much he's training in arm wrestling. My arm is still hurting, so we'll see. 2 weeks to heal, so we'll see who.
You hurt yourself
No,
in arm
actually,
wrestling.
no.
I'm kidding. I'm
Yeah,
getting fit. I'm getting
actually
fit.
doing.
Well, I just want to answer the question about I don't know people who get fit just for DEF CON. And if you find that answer out when you're there, please like tell me. But I do feel like there is a good amount of people in cybersecurity. I imagine they're kind of like me, where like I always say like it's kind of random that I ended up in cybersecurity because like even though I've always loved information and people tell me that I'm like Jeopardy because like apparently I read the news and I read you don't see it but there's a ton of books behind me like hand not Kindle like books but I always say like I don't want to be on the computer like and half the time especially when I was in consulting like I'd hear a problem from a client and then like have to go work on the solution and I promise you 9 times out of 10 especially when I was training for my 2.5 marathons last year I'd like go for a 5 or 10 whatever mile run and like in the run it's just like the processing would just happen now that I'm not in front of a computer I'm not on Teams calls and then I'd come back and have like for the most part like the better solution like ready to just throw down to like a slide or whatever it was and so I think at least for me being fit is just a way to like have true balance or like rhythm in life because if I'm on a computer all the time and then if I watch TV if I'm just like I just have tech coming at me. Like I just get squirrely.
Yeah.
It just, my favorite part of the week right now is Saturdays when I get to do like a 30-mile
Yeah.
bike ride.
And we'll wrap up. Yeah. Like I was doing Rasta Labs. It's a Hack the Box Pro Lab a couple of days ago. I finished it and literally like I had 3 flags left and I was banging my head, you know, and nothing was working. And literally like, that's when I was like, hey, like I need to go to the gym. I want to disconnect. But like when I get honed in on it, that's why I was able to knock out like 2 of them in like a week and a half. Cause it's like, I'm spending a lot of hours on them. Like when I really want to do it. And that's another goal, like before DEF CON, which I don't know how realistic it is. Cause it's in 2 weeks is to get all the pro labs done in a month. But I don't know how real, you know, now I'm working on Zephyr. So hopefully I'll have that one done by this weekend. And that's 3. And I think there's offshore cybernetics and then APT labs. And like, again, like maybe that'll show, you know, like we were talking about before, like I like to just be more modest and just chill and like not show how much I really know. Maybe those will show a little bit of that I know a little bit more than I probably show. But yeah, like I really enjoy the hacking stuff and just disconnect from the computer really gives you that, okay, that's what maybe that was. And it sucks because it came to me like one of my persistence, one of the things in that lab, I was literally doing like a pull up and I was like, oh, fuck, I think that's it. I had to text myself, oh, maybe this was it because this is not working. That tool didn't work. And I have to like write a piece of, you know, a piece of malware or whatever to bypass this EDR because Rasta Labs is more like red teaming. So you're using some kind of C2 if it's, you know, Sliver or you know, Havoc or whatever you're going to use, CrowdStrike, and then we can, you know, obfuscate data, whatever. And like right then I was like, fuck, that's what it is. And I had to like write and literally like
talk about like a tech show off right there. I'm like, oh, I like to be modest and not show what I know.
Yeah, but it was fun. And
sure, just dropping like, CrowdStrike, and you're just like coming up with this stuff on a whim, texting yourself. All right, probably got the PowerShell commands. Yeah, all right. Now we know who's behind the outage. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Kidding. Oh, I'm humble. I don't like to show off what I know as I'm doing pull-ups.
Yeah. So that's
all right. Whatever you keep telling yourself.
So
buddy.
That's it. So if there's any last words, if you want to say, like, and we'll wrap up and we'll just call this. I really appreciate you coming on tonight and talking about your stuff. and hopefully other people thought it was pretty informative as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I miss this for whatever it's worth. Like during the pandemic, a lot of the networking
Hmm.
went online and it allowed for a lot of really cool, I feel like, conversations that this is where the inspiration happens. So like, yeah, we talked about having the news and like, I think like for me, that's helpful at times because again,
Hmm.
it's what you make it. But more so I've realized like since the pandemic has essentially like ended, there aren't like too many of these like, you know, think tank, innovative, just like
Hmm.
brain dumps, right? And so I'm really glad I got to be here. I did enjoy kind of putting some notes together, and I hope that some of the information we went over was like of interest. And if anyone wants to continue the conversation, I'm on LinkedIn. I think Pat, you connected or you put a post out with my profile. Otherwise, I'm happy to. You can find me. It's Ryan Renee. I don't think my last name is out there. Maybe that guy was onto something. But no, I think it is. It does say Ryan Renee Rosado. And yeah, happy to connect and or
Awesome.
do it again sometime.
Thanks
But
so
thanks
much,
for
Ryan.
having me.
Until next